shul, and still is. And I must admit that when I started working there, and even during the interview process, I was rather intimidated. Rabbi Weiss, at the time and now as well, was and continues to be well known for his activism on behalf of Soviet Jewry, on behalf of Jews in trouble all over the world. Most of you were too young to even know much of what he did many years ago, but he was known for chaining himself to the UN and other places. He visited jails and was in jails in countries around the world. And I was a little intimidated, because I'm not one of these rally, and that's not my thing. The one rally I went to with Rabbi Weiss was when the Yankees won the World Series, and we went to the victory celebration in Manhattan. But what I learned very shortly after, what I learned in the first few months and years of working for Rabbi Weiss and closely with Rabbi Weiss, that Rabbi Weiss is one of the most gentle, sweet, and easy to talk to people that I've ever met in my life. And I consider myself lucky that even to this day, though I'm not working in Riverdale anymore, each and every opportunity that I have to interact with him and with his wife Toby, who's here as well, I feel that unbelievable warmth and caring that Rabbi Weiss feels with every person with whom he comes in contact. Whether that's members of his shul, whether it's complete strangers, whether it's cab drivers in Riverdale, who I remember years ago used to fight for the opportunity to drive him when he had to go places, because he became their personal mentor and he counseled them while they drove him in the car. This is Rabbi Weiss, and what a treat it is for us. I know on very short notice, he's here for a couple of days, Shloshim this past Sunday for Stuart Harris.
Larger formula of finding meaning through giving, which leads to redemption, through the Geula of Am Yisrael, and through the redemption of Am Yisrael and Eretz Yisrael, the redemption of the entire world. So I want to share with you some images and some stories of people who give. People who are my Rebbes, people who are my teachers. Here are some examples. Not far from here in New Orleans, maybe 1,000 miles, a couple moved down there, Dalia and Uri Topolovsky. They moved down after Katrina. They had a young son. And they turned to me at Chovevei Torah, where he went to rabbinical school, and he says, Rabbi, I'm going down to New Orleans, and I'm going to make a difference. I've read in the paper that Katrina destroyed the synagogue. Some of you may have seen in books the picture of the rabbi who was walking out of the synagogue like this one, water up to his neck, holding a Torah above his head. And Uri says, there's no synagogue, but I'm going to make the difference. And Uri and Dalia go down there, and they give 6-7 years of their life to make a difference. And I had the great honor to be in that synagogue, the first Shabbat of its dedication. And I'll never forget that moment when Jackie, who's a woman, is carrying the Torah, and she's taking it close to the Aron. And on top of the Aron are all kinds of words. Look at the top of this Aron. Yivdu et Hashem b'simcha. On the top of that ark were words I have found on top of no other ark in the world, and I've been around. And the words were, Mayim Rabim Lo Yuchlu Lechabot Et Ha'ahava. All the waters will not be able to extinguish the love. Ask Uri, ask Dalia Topolovsky, what were the moments of their lives of greatest significance? And they'll say, it's the moment when they stepped back to make room for their community. It's the moment when they found meaning through giving. Because on that Shabbat of dedication, that Shabbat of dedication was a Shabbat of a small redemption. It was a Shabbat of a small Geula. I'll tell you another story. This story I especially dedicate to Stuart Harris. Stuart suffered from a terrible, terrible cancer. What a wonderful man he was. What little I know about treatment of people and kindness came from Stuart. And towards the end of his life, he took a gamble. He said, I'm going to try a bone marrow transplant. Years back, there was a young man, a little bit older than you, just a little bit older. His name is Jay Feinberg. He suffered from a terrible cancer, and his life was saved through a bone marrow match. And he said, I'm going to make a difference. And he started a worldwide campaign where people could take swabs of their saliva from their cheeks, from their mouths, and it would go into some computer. This is years back. It wasn't as sophisticated as now. And since that time, he has organized literally hundreds of thousands of men and women, Jews, not Jews, everyone, to take these swabs. And through his efforts, hundreds of people have had their lives saved. Do you know who tried to save Stuart Harris's life? From all of the bone marrow donors possible that could possibly save Stuart's life, and in his case it didn't work, there was a woman from, would you believe it, from Germany, who was the only match. Could you imagine? And I say to Stuart, we're 60 years after the Shoah. She said, what a glorious world, Stuart said. And he showed me a letter that he wrote to this woman. I have seen people give bone marrow. It's a whole day event, and it's not so simple. This woman tried to save life. I'll bet everything that if you ask her what was the finest moment in her life, she'll say it was that day when she tried to find meaning through giving, through which, I don't even know if she's Jewish, through which redemption comes, through which Geulah comes. What a moment. And how much credit does Jay Feinberg deserve? One more story about two boys. Could have been two girls, two women, your age, maybe a little bit older. They go on Aliyah. I know them well because they're my grandsons. Our daughter Ilana has moved to Israel. She has 9 children, 7 boys and 2 girls. And when she moves, I become concerned because when you're moving to Israel, the culture of high school students is very different than your culture. It's a culture of recognition that by the time I'm a junior, I'm not only playing ball, I'm not only doing this and I'm doing that, but I've got to start preparing for the Army. And I'm wondering whether these kids who come from Teaneck, New Jersey, they could have just as well come from Hollywood or from Boca, whether they're into the culture of serving in the Army. You know, in America, when you go into college, you're right after high school. You go to your Tochnit Yud Gimel to Israel, and then you go to college when you're 18, 19 years old. That's not the way it is in Israel. In Israel, you serve in the Army. You don't get to college till you're 23, 24. So I'm sitting with the eldest, with Gilad, and I say, Gilad, are you ready for the Army? And one of my greatest moments was, we were davening Friday night on the hills of Yerushalayim, and this young man who had been in Israel then, maybe 4 years, he looks at the hills and he says, Sabi Avi. I like being called Sabi Avi. Avi's my first name, Saba, Sabi. Grandfather Avi, he says, look at Yerushalayim, and I'm going to have the honor to defend Yerushalayim. I want to bless you. You should experience such a moment of a grandchild saying, I'm finding meaning through giving, redemption, by defending Israel. What a moment. And then he tells me a couple of months later that he got his Tzav Rishon, which is his first call-up. I say, what happens? He says, well, it's an interview. What happens in the interview? Well, Sabi Avi, they want to check if I'm normal. Can I get along with my buddies? I said, I know you're normal. What else? They said to me, Sabi Avi, what do you want to be in the Army? I said, Gilad, what'd you say? I said, Gilad says, I want to be a fighter, a lochem. I say, Gilad, why do you want to be a fighter? And my heart dropped. Because I didn't want him to say, I want to be a fighter to beat up on Arabs. That's not what Torah is about. That's not what Tzva Haganah Yisrael is about. We're of course defending Am Yisrael and Eretz Yisrael. But we're not about killing Arabs. This is not what this is. And I'm wondering what he's going to answer. Why do you want to be a fighter? And this young man, he was then 2 years older, 3 years older than you, from 6,000 miles away, he says to me on the phone, Sabi Avi, this country has done so much for me. I want to give back. I want to give back. And then he goes on and he gets into the Golani Brigade and he gets into an elite unit called Egoz. He's the MAG. The MAG carries this 22-pound foam machine gun with 25 pounds added of ammo. I'm proud of him, and I'm proud of Eitan, the second one. He too wanted to be a fighter. Could you imagine how disappointed he was? They found that he has an infection in his ear. So this kid couldn't be a fighter, and he says to me, Sabi Avi, you've got some contacts, you've got some pull, and if you don't got pull, speak to Katz, speak to Dan Katz, speak to Jeff. Help me, I want to do more. And he enlists in the Air Force. And he does this and he does that, and every day he's calling me and he's saying to me, I'm not doing enough. Anybody can load missiles on a plane. Anybody can deal with an ejection seat for a pilot. I want to do more, something singular. Those are the images. The images of people who find meaning through giving. And I stand before each and every one of you and tell you, each of you can do the same. When I meet young people, and I travel the country to meet young people, many young people think, or they don't think that they can really make a difference. So I talk to you about a Gilad and a Eitan in the army. The army is not for everyone. Not everybody can do what Jay Feinberg did. And I sure as heck think that if I'm in the Twin Towers and I'm coming down, the first thing I'm going to try to do is save my life. It takes a very special hero in Andrew Zucker to say, I'm going to turn around, I'm going to go up instead of go down. I'm not asking anyone, I'm not asking myself to be someone else. But I stand before you and ask and tell you, be who you are. And God had something to do with your creation. And as God is of infinite value, of tremendous value, every single one of you is of special value. Every single one of you can make a difference. I stand before you and tell you, don't wait for your leaders. You can be the leader. I started a yeshiva and people ask me, what's the main thing you do? I respond and say, the main thing I do is to say, I'm not the leader. I want to empower other people to be leaders. So when you talk about doing this chesed and that chesed, that's what it's about, but it's recognizing that chesed is not just a piece of Torah, it's the whole of Torah. Chesed is part of this larger covenant, this larger brit that I'm talking about, this larger commitment we have to God. A God who says that what covenant is about is v'shamru derech Hashem, lasot tzedakah u'mishpat, to follow the path of the Lord and to do justice and righteousness. That's what Stuart said, Jeff, in that video. Stuart knew he was dying. He knew he was dying, or he was concerned he was going to die soon. And he was asked, what is life about? What is Torah about? That should be shown, Jeff, to the school. What Stuart said. When Stuart said what life is about is treating a fellow human being with dignity, with holiness. That's right. The cabbie we're with. The secretary we pass every morning when we walk into the school. The street cleaner. The ambulance driver. When we hear the ambulance driver, we say, to heck, it's slowing me down. I'm not going to get where I want to fast enough. I say, when I hear the ambulance driver, I say a prayer. Thank God for the ambulance drivers. May they get to the hospital on time. That's what Torah. That's the bottom line of Torah. That's what God wants from us.